Alright folks, get ready for spooky autumny thrills, cause today we'll be covering Over the Garden Wall. Created by Patrick McHale, this 10-episode series revolves around two half-brothers, Wirt and Greg, who are lost in a mysterious forest called the Unknown. This forest is plagued by a beast, which terrorizes the people living within as well as our boys, along with their buddies Beatrice, Fred, and of course, the iconic Jason Funderburker. Before we get started with the show, let's have a brief intro of our protagonists, Greg and Wirt. So first up, we've got Wirt, who's the older brother of Greg, and let me tell ya, if overthinking was an Olympic sport, he'd take gold all day. Next up, we've got his younger brother Greg, who is a walking, talking ball of sunshine, and pretty much the opposite to his big bro's personality. Then we have his frog, Benjamin Franklin, who can talk, sing, and even play piano. Apart from them, we've got a few more characters which we'll talk about soon. So without further ado, let's get going. Starting up with episode 1, The Old Grist Mill. The episode starts off with Greg and Wirt being lost in, you guessed it, a mysterious forest. The brothers walk past the spooky trees, and Wirt brings out his inner Shakespeare, ranting about their situation.
Though I am lost, my wounded heart resides back home, in pieces, strewn about the graveyard of my lost love.
But suddenly, they hear a chopping sound and spot a woodcutter with a lantern. Seeing this, Greg runs off to investigate, and that's when a talking bluebird shows up. But Wirt is all like, wait, what? He tries to explain that birds can't talk because they have teeny tiny brains, which doesn't go well with the birdie.
I'm just saying, you're weird. Like, not normal. I mean, oh my gosh, stop talking to it, Wirt.
Right then, the woodcutter joins their convo and starts talking about the beast, welcoming them to the unknown. This guy's aura definitely gives off some bad vibes. He takes the boys to an old mill and explains his job, but the two aren't convinced as they find the guy a little suspicious, rightfully so. While the woodcutter's out working, Greg starts messing with everything and Wirt's busy overthinking as usual. After realizing his frog's missing, Greg starts looking for it. He climbs in an open barrel and tries to find out what the woodcutter's doing, and boom, he falls into a barrel and meets the beast. The woodcutter comes crashing out of his room, asking Wirt where his brother is. The monster suddenly bursts in, sending Greg flying. The woodcutter tries to protect the boys, but Greg accidentally knocks him out. Now it's just the boys versus the beast. They start running, throwing candy, and eventually end up on the roof. Wirt asks his little bro whether he has any more candies, but unfortunately, all he had was an empty pocket. Luckily, Greg spots a candy in Wirt's cloth and throws it off as the beast tries to catch it. The monster gets stuck in the mill wheel and coughs up some oil and a black turtle as the whole place comes crashing down. The boys land in the lake, and Greg emerges with a dog that completely ignores him.
Picked up that turtle, and now he's my new best friend. Oh.
The woodcutter's flabbergasted after seeing his destroyed mill, and more specifically, his spilled oil. He drops the bombshell that the dog is not the beast, and sends the boys off to find a town. And, most importantly, tells Greg to find a proper name for his frog. The next episode kicks off with our boys strolling through the forest, but Greg, being Greg, starts blowing raspberries, which annoys his big bro Wirt, who just wants to get the heck out of this place. Right then, Greg hears a voice calling for help, and goes to check it out. Meanwhile, Wirt's eyes light up, as he finally finds a place that he can call home. Pottsfield. Spoiler alert, that's not the kind of place you can call home. In the bush, Greg finds a little bird, who introduces herself as Beatrice. She promises him a favor, which Greg thinks of as a wish. The little bird suggests visiting Adelaide, the good woman who grants wishes. But Wirt's not buying the fairy godmother nonsense.
The good woman of the woods. She could help you get home.
Oh.
No.
And decides to check out Pottsfield instead. They arrive in the village and find nothing but empty houses and a sleeping turkey. Dang, even turkeys work 9 to 5. After scouting the village, Wirt joins the group and hears music coming out of a barn.
Where's Greg?
Do you hear that?
Huh?
So the trio decide to check it out and find a barn full of what looks like living pumpkins. As it turns out, it's just the locals celebrating their harvest by wearing some cheap pumpkin cosplay. Well, isn't it? That's what the boys think. The pumpkin people start getting suspicious of our trio and start closing in. But then Enoch, the tallest pumpkin, steps in and questions the boys about what they're doing in his village.
Now hold on, everybody. Let's not jump to any conclusions.
Whoa.
And after a lot of yapping, he finds the boys guilty of trespassing, destruction of property, sentencing them to a few hours of manual labor. So there they are, harvesting corn and pumpkins, and Wirt even decides to make a house in this village. After all the farming, they start digging holes in a field, and Beatrice jokes that they're digging their own graves, and that's when Wirt realizes something might be off. To make matters worse, Greg finds a skeleton, and Wirt starts panicking as he sees Enoch along with his pumpkin gang on their way.
Yes, I want your help.
He tries to stall the pumpkin boys and girls by talking about some rocks, while Beatrice removes their chains. But much to his surprise, more like his dismay, his little bro and the birdie leave him without any signal. And if this wasn't enough, the skeleton in Greg's hole crawls out and starts dancing. The pumpkins are thrilled, welcoming their new buddy to the party. So yeah, Wirt realizes that all the pumpkin people are actually skeletons. Right then, Enoch chimes in and tells Wirt he's free to go.
You sure you want to leave?
Me? Yes.
Oh, well, you'll join us someday.
But obviously, the boys aren't exactly keen on joining them anytime soon. The episode ends with the trio heading deeper into the unknown, as Beatrice talks about getting home too. Something's fishy about this bird. Episode 3, Schooltown Follies, kicks off with Greg, Wirt, and Beatrice walking and walking, as Greg starts beating out a tune about Adelaide's house. Right then, Wirt stops to tie his shoes, and Beatrice gets all huffy and puffy that they're taking too much time. But Greg just wants to have some fun, to which she sarcastically tells him to be more like Wirt, a complete pushover. Oof, mean words coming from a little birdie. As Greg wanders off, he stumbles upon a school, and seeing the very sight disgusts him. He's like, I'm good, and keeps on moving to do his part of making the world a better place. That's my boy. Meanwhile, Wirt and Beatrice find the same school and decide to check it out. They meet Miss Langtree, the teacher, who's all sit down and be quiet kids, and Wirt plays along with the pushover thing. She starts singing about her long-lost love, Jimmy Brown, while teaching the alphabet to the animals. And yeah, the animals are definitely having a hard time. In the meantime, Greg's having a blast with his new friends, a raccoon, a deer, and a possum. They start finding cats to play, 2 cats, when all of a sudden, a gorilla appears out of nowhere. They start running, and end up hiding on the school bell. As the bell rings, the students get ready for lunch, and on the menu, we've nothing but good old potatoes. The students are totally depressed just looking at it, and so is Greg, so he decides to spice things up with some molasses, and comes up with some entertainment to go along with it, the potatoes and molasses song. However, Miss Langtree's father, Mr. Langtree, shows up, and takes away all the instruments. Greg's bummed as he thinks that he has failed his mission to have fun and change the world. The boys sneak out and find Mr. Langtree crying in the forest, struggling for funds to keep the school open. Hearing this, Greg decides to steal the instruments, and the next morning, Mr. Langtree wakes up in shock as he finds all his instruments missing. However, much to his surprise, he finds the animals using it to organize a fundraising concert.
What is this? It's a benefit concert for the school.
Isn't it grand?
Just when everything was going great, the gorilla returns. However, the gorilla turns out to be Miss Langtree's long-lost love, Jimmy Brown, who got stuck in the costume trying to earn money for a wedding ring. The episode ends with Jimmy finally reuniting with Miss Langtree, and Greg singing another round of potatoes and molasses. Jeez, I can't get this song out of my head. And now you have to listen to it too.
Potatoes and molasses.
Episode 4, Songs of the Dark Lantern, kicks off with our trio getting a free roller coaster ride on a hay wagon. The driver starts screaming that the beast is chasing them, but Greg doesn't find any and calls the driver absolutely nuts. They end up at a tavern filled with strange people, and Beatrice is kicked out as bluebirds are bad luck. Inside the tavern, the people start introducing themselves from their profession. We've got the butcher, the baker, and even a midwife who spits up whole fish. Don't ask why, I don't know either. But poor Wirt, who's just trying to get directions, ends up being labeled as everything from a fool to a young lover. Meanwhile, Beatrice is chatting up with a horse outside and hears someone chopping wood and singing in the rain. Back in the tavern, Wirt's getting love advice from a toy maker.
Everyone thinks I'm...
You're the young lover.
What? Young lover? No.
If you really want to get with this Adelaide gal.
I don't.
And the others force him to sing a love song, which goes about as well as you'd expect. However, things get serious when Wirt mentions the beast. The tavern keeper then drops some horrifying knowledge about the beast turning kids into oil trees. That is really creepy. Just then, Beatrice screams outside. Hearing this, Wirt goes full on hero mode as he grabs Greg, George Washington, and rides off on a horse. They find the woodcutter by a tree with Beatrice knocked out. He jumps to the conclusion that the woodcutter is the beast and pushes his lantern, causing a huge fire. After the escape, Beatrice wakes up, and it turns out she just flew into a tree. And yeah, the horse can also talk, and his name is Fred.
You can talk?
The episode ends with the woodcutter meeting up with the real beast, where it's revealed that the woodcutter is keeping the lantern lit to save his daughter's soul. The next episode kicks off with a rather peculiar dinner party, with Wirt, Gregory, Beatrice, and Fred the horse, yes, the talking horse, at a grand dining table with Quincy Endicott. Now, who's this Endicott guy? Well, he's your average millionaire, but with extreme emotional instability and a mansion so big that it practically has its own zip code. But wait. What are these guys doing here? Well, it turns out that Beatrice has convinced Endicott that Wirt and Greg are his long-lost nephews. Why? All for a couple of pennies to catch a ferry to Adelaide's home. And rightly, Endicott has fallen into their trap, but is delighted to have company since he's very lonely. Meanwhile, Wirt questions Beatrice about their deception, and she spills the beans about their penny-stealing plan. Wirt is horrified at the idea, but reluctantly agrees when he realizes they only need 2 cents. After dinner, Endicott gives Greg a piggyback ride around the parlor and tells them about the new section of his mansion. He also comes clean that he's fallen in love with a woman in a painting. He's convinced that she's a ghost and wants the boys to leave his mansion, but Greg convinces Endicott to show him the painting.
Yeah, Unky, I want to see the ghost.
Oh, how I long to see her just once again.
And the trio venture into the mansion. With the trio gone, Beatrice and Wirt start looking for a penny. However, they're spooked by a noise and dive straight inside the cupboard. With the cupboard locked, Beatrice and Wirt have a heart-to-heart conversation. She reveals her backstory, that she was once a human but was cursed by a bluebird for throwing a rock. She explains that this is the reason why she's so desperate to see Adelaide. Right then, Wirt also reveals his secret of having a crush on a girl, playing the clarinet and whispering poetry to himself at night. Nothing too sus about that, though. They discover a secret panel at the back of the closet and discover a completely new part of the mansion. Seeing the architecture, Wirt identifies it as French Rococo and has got an idea about Endicott's ghost. Meanwhile, the trio are on their own adventure, and Endicott confesses there's no ghost, but he has simply lost his mind. However, Greg's got a hunch there really could be a ghost and convinces the group to check it out. As they approach the bedroom, Endicott gets increasingly nervous. Greg notices a suspicious mess in the corner, and Fred suggests that Endicott might be a crazed lunatic who did this to the ghost woman.
Nothing. Endicott is a crazed lunatic who did away with the lady of the house and is now pretending to own the place.
Hearing this, Endicott gets defensive, accusing Fred of being after his money, which is fair, to be honest, and hints at the terrible things that he's done to make all his money. Well, I guess the lunatic part might be right. Right then, the trio hears footsteps approaching, and Endicott's convinced that the ghost has come for him, so he hides behind the bed. But plot twist, the ghost actually is Margaret Gray, Endicott's business rival and the woman from the painting. Ironically, they both think that they're both ghosts and faint seeing each other. When they wake up, Wirt explains that both their mansions had grown so large that they actually connect. Both Endicott and Margaret declare their love for each other, and they share a kiss. As the boys prepare to leave, Endicott thanks Greg for helping him face his fears, and both give a penny, solving the fairy fare problem. Fred decides to stay behind, after landing a job as an official tea horse. As they leave, Greg throws both pennies into the pool to prove that Endicott's wrong about him having good sense, as he proudly declares he has no sense. No sense at all. Well, kid, you're not wrong there. The next episode kicks off with our boys and Beatrice finding their way on the Frogland Ferry. It's all fancy with frogs dressing in 19th century outfits, except for George Washington, who has nothing on him. Anyway, Wirt and Greg are pretty chill, thinking they're going home very soon. However, instead of being happy, Beatrice is gloomy. Right then, the frog police arrive and chase our boys, not for not being frogs, but rather for not paying for the tickets. They manage to disguise themselves as band members, but accidentally knock the bassoon player, and it's absolute chaos. The frogs start making a ruckus and want them gone. Seeing this, Wirt brings out his inner Mozart and starts playing the bassoon. Right then, Greg's frog starts singing too.
A song rises over the lilies, sweeps high to clear over the reeds.
Even after the boys get exposed, the frogs love their music and they start dancing. After their riveting performance, get it? The boat docks, and all the frogs decide it's nap time in the mud. Meanwhile, Beatrice asks the boys to forget about Adelaide and gaslights poor Wirt to stay with her in the forest. But Wirt refuses, and the brothers follow her when she sneaks away during the night. And it turns out that Adelaide's not the fairy godmother they were expecting. She's more like the wicked witch who has made a deal to turn Beatrice's family human again in exchange for the boys. When Beatrice tries to back out, Adelaide threatens her family. Right then, the boys come barging in, only to get caught in Adelaide's ropes.
All along, you've been leading us to this crazy lady?
I do as he commands, the voice of the night, the beast.
Seeing this, the birdie opens the window as fresh air is poisonous to the witch. As the fresh air enters, Adelaide crumbles faster than a cookie in milk. With the witch gone, the boys escape from her house and head back to the woods, leaving Beatrice. The episode ends with Wirt's sense of trust at an all-time low, while Greg's just happy to have Benjamin Franklin back. In the next episode, we continue with where we left off, with Wirt and Greg walking through the rainy woods as they're pretty down after Beatrice's betrayal. Greg asks if he's got a plan to get home, but Wirt's just lost in his thoughts. Suddenly, the woodcutter pops pops up and the boys lose their minds. Rightfully so, I'd say. He tries to warn them about the beast, but they're still convinced that this guy is the beast. They make a run for their money and stumble upon a house that looks quite cozy. They sneak in and find a basket full of black turtles. Yeah, the same ones which we saw in episode 1. And out of one of the doors came a young, frail girl who introduces herself as Lorna, who apparently works as a maid in the house. She warns them about her auntie Whispers, who enters and immediately finds out that someone has sneaked into her house.
Then no one shall be devoured alive tonight.
Nay, I pray not, Mum.
Devoured alive?
She uses a magical bell that makes Lorna spill the beans about any intruders. Luckily, Auntie Whispers is so blind that she fails to find the boys in the barrel of turtles. She goes off to bed, leaving Lorna with a to-do list longer than Santa's naughty list. So with the aunt gone, Wirt and Greg come up with their temporary hideout, and Wirt offers to help out the poor girl. But it looks like our gentleman has a thing for Lorna, as they start blushing at each other, much to Greg's confusion. As they clean and wipe the floor, Greg and Dr. Cucumber, Greg's frog. If you haven't noticed, the frog's name changes a lot. Anyway, Greg and Dr. Cucumber go on a little adventure upstairs and accidentally wake up the witch. She starts chasing the trio and they end up in a locked room. However, much to the brothers' surprise, Lorna transforms into a demon and starts chasing them.
Our bones dissolved.
No!
I told you boys to stay away from her.
As our heroes escape, they fall into a swamp with the evil Lorna right in front of them. However, Greg's frog starts glowing like a disco ball as it has swallowed the magic bell. So Greg uses it to turn her into a magical tiger. Genius idea, right? Wirt then quickly snatches Mr. Cucumber to exorcise the demon. Right then, Auntie Whispers arrives, and Lorna decides to stay with her aunt, making her happy. Alright, the next episode starts off with Mr. Fish doing some good old fishing, while Greg shouts home, home, as if it's gonna appear right in front of him. Right then, they hear the beast singing his creepy song, which is enough to make his big bro even more depressed after the bluebird's betrayal. They finally reach the land, but Wirt's not convinced that they will ever reach home, and asks Greg to shut up. The brothers, along with Skipper, Greg's frog, curl up under a tree for a nap, because what else can you do when you're stuck in a magical forest? As the trio sleep, Greg has a wild dream, and the next thing you know, he's in Cloud City. He meets up with the residents who ask Greg to lead their band, and our boy's like, oh, absolutely. They start singing and dancing, but Greg, being Greg, accidentally opens up the gates of the North Wind. The North Wind and his minions start causing chaos, and Greg's got to save the day. After a long chase, little Greg manages to trap the massive North Wind in a tiny bottle. Seeing this, the Queen of the Clouds arrives and offers Greg a wish. He asks if he and Wirt can go home, but the Cloud Queen tells him that the beast has already claimed his big brother.
The beast has claimed him already.
Oh, I should have been leading better.
So what does our little hero do now? He whispers something into the Queen's ears and goes back to the real world. In the woods, Greg says goodbye to his sleeping bro, telling him to take care of Ronald, Greg's frog. When Wirt finally wakes up, he realizes the situation and chases after Greg, only to fall in a frozen lake. Just then, Beatrice shows up with Mr. Fishing Fish. Well, that's what I named it.
Wirt! Wirt!
They save the drowning Wirt using a fishing net, and with that, the episode ends on a cliffhanger. Episode 9, Into the Unknown, starts off with a flashback of Wirt before coming to the unknown. He's nervous and walking around his room like he's about to give a speech to the whole world. Right then, he takes out the tape labeled for someone called Sarah, and he throws it at the wall, then scrambles to fix it. After fixing the tape, he goes up in the attic and chooses an old marching band uniform as his Halloween costume. On a football field, he's joined by Greg, who wants to go on a frog hunt. Right then, he notices Wirt's eyes fixed on the bee mascot girl, and also spots a tape in his hand. And being the helpful brother that he is, Greg grabs the tape and runs into Wirt's classmates. He gives the tape to one of the girls who drops the bomb that Jason Funderburker is planning to ask Sarah out.
Well, you better act fast, because we heard Jason Funderburker is going to ask her out at the Halloween party tonight.
Jason Funderburker?
Yeah.
After hearing this, Wirt is crushed and runs away from the field. As the brothers walk along, Greg suggests a frog hunt, but Wirt's too busy drowning in depression. Suddenly, he realizes he forgot to get the tape back and rushes, only to find out that the girl has already put the tape in Sarah's jacket. He tries to take it back, but gets caught and has to make a run for it. Right then, Sarah comes out changing her costume and goes off on her bike. They end up at a Halloween party to which Wirt wasn't invited to, but Greg charges right in with Wirt right behind him. He bumps into Sarah, who invites him to hang out at the graveyard with her friends, but Wirt turns her down. When the universe gives you chances, you gotta make the most of it, dude. Jokes aside, with the tape still with Sarah, our boys have no other option but to chase her to the graveyard. The brothers hide behind the tombstones and spy on Sarah and the others. Greg offers to act as a dead elephant to distract them.
What do I do?
I'll pretend to be a dead elephant and distract them while you get the tape.
Please just stay here.
But unfortunately, it doesn't go well. Not only that, Greg points out Wirt's hiding spot, which only embarrasses him. And just when things couldn't get any worse, a police car shows up that sends everybody running. The brothers climb the wall of the graveyard and see Sarah finding his tape, with Jason Funderburker suggesting they listen to it. With no other option, Wirt jumps to the other side of the wall with his little brother, Greg. Over there, Greg finds a frog, but before he can name it, a train comes right in front of them. They escape from being turned into pancakes, but end up rolling down a hill and fall straight into a lake. Now the scene cuts to Wirt in a tree with Beatrice's family, who feeds him some dirt. The episode ends with Wirt leaving the tree to find his little bro. And with that, we are on to the final episode of this series. As Beatrice flaps her teeny tiny wings, she spots Greg talking with the Beast. The Beast gives the little boy impossible tasks like catching the sun in his cup.
Now I want the sun.
The sun?
But Greg solves the problem by putting the cup on a stump, saying that the sun will land in it when it sets. The Beast tells him to wait in the cold, and poor Greg agrees, not knowing it's all a trap. As the strong winds blow away Beatrice, she bumps into Wirt, and they team up to find Greg. Meanwhile, the woodcutter is grinding the edelwood branches to stoke his daughter's flame, and he hears the Beast singing. He follows the tune and finds the Beast with Greg, who's slowly turning into an edelwood tree, of course for more oil. The Beast tries to convince the woodcutter that he's doing this for his lovely daughter.
You need oil, or else your daughter will... I told you to hold your tongue!
But the woodcutter's horrified and tries to free Greg as the Beast starts retaliating. Right then, Wirt and Beatrice finally find Greg, and Wirt has this big brother epiphany. Greg asks his big bro to give his stolen rock back to Mrs. Daniels, but Wirt tells him to return it himself, trying to keep Greg's spirits up by mentioning the frog, which he names Jason Funderburker. The Beast is not the type of guy to give up easily, and tries to cook up a deal with Wirt, but Wirt, using his reasoning skills, figures out that it's the Beast's soul in the lantern.
It's almost like your soul is in this lantern.
In a total moment of bravery, Wirt threatens to blow out the lantern, hands the lantern back to the woodcutter, frees Greg, gives Beatrice the magic scissors, and finally pieces out. Damn, that was quick. After realizing that he's been tricked all along, the woodcutter blows out the lantern, as the Beast screams in agony.
No! Listen!
Goodbye, Beatrice.
Goodbye, Wirt.
And the next thing we know, Wirt's back in the real world. They end up in the hospital, where Sarah and her friends are listening to Greg's wild stories in the unknown. Right then, Sarah mentions that she found Wirt's tape, but she doesn't have a player. Well, when the universe gives you another chance, you gotta make the best out of it. And it looks like Wirt's gonna do just that.
I mean, you can listen to it.
And so the story is complete.
The final episode wraps up with a montage of the people of the unknown as we see the woodcutter reuniting with his daughter, Lorna and Auntie Whisper smiling, and Jimmy Brown, Miss Langtree, and her animal students watching the circus. But wait, there's more. We finally see Beatrice in her human form with her family, and our little boy Greg returns back the rock to Mrs. Daniels' garden. And with that, the series comes to an end. I hope you all enjoyed this quick little video. I love this mini-series so much, and I'd love to hear which part you guys like the most. So feel free to talk about it in the comments. Also, of course, feel free to like and subscribe if you want to see more videos just like this one. Hope you all have a great day. See ya!